I'm Alex Tusky, and today I am joined by Grayson Singleton and Ian Nickel. Grayson, we missed you last week. It's good to have you back.
Good to be back. It was a lot of fun doing what I was up to last week.
Well, last week you were at the Tulsa game, which was too close for comfort. OSU did win 28-23, and it was not the game that anyone wanted yet again. What were you guys' takeaways?
Well, my first takeaway was that the defense, even with a lot of pressure on it and just being put in bad situation after bad situation and then being left on the field for the majority of the second half, actually stood up. And when the test came and when you just had to just dig deep into that last reserve of energy, they were able to pull together one last stop, similar to what they did against Missouri State.
Coach Gundy said in his post-game conference that he was proud of the defense for continuing to put the team in a great situation, but I think we would all agree that we don't want to have to see our defense be relied on that much. Ian?
Yeah, Gundy also said that the offense was average, and I kind of disagree. I think it was below average.
Right, yeah.
He got bailed out by an LD Brown 98-yard kickoff return, play of the game, obviously, but the offense did not look great at all.
I have in my notes, it was an okay game, nothing spectacular besides that LD Brown special teams score. If you guys think that he wouldn't have gotten that in the fourth, do you think we would have won that game?
You know, I think there was still a way that we could have won that game because in the same breath of me talking about how Oklahoma State's defense was on the field for a long time, same was Tulsa's. So I feel like Spencer Sanders, with that extra mobility that he has over Shane Illingworth, which eventually sealed the game on the bootleg that pretty much ended the game for all intents and purposes. You know, I feel like they could have gotten creative enough, which creativity is not this coaching staff's strong suit, but they could have gotten creative just enough to use Spencer Sanders' legs to pull that game out. So I think they could have won it, but obviously the LD Brown kickoff return was very much helpful.
I agree with that too, but I'd rather not talk about that. I'm just glad that LD Brown did return the ball.
Right.
Amen to that.
This was Spencer's first game back. It was an okay game. He had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. What do you think we should have seen more from him, Ian?
Well, I would have liked to see more passing yards. He only had 173, went 15 to 26. I think Illingworth had like 40 pass attempts. So a little bit more of that, but he looked all right, I think. But I think with Spencer Sanders, we're just expecting more, and we're not getting that at all.
Something that I noticed, and I wanted to get your guys' opinion on it, is that in years past, we have had very tall receivers, and now we're working with shorter boys, like we said last week. Brennan Presley's 5'8", and I think a lot of the passes that Sanders was throwing could have been caught by Dylan Stoner or Tylan Wallace, and I just don't think he was used to having a shorter guy in the field. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
That is absolutely a viable question to ask about the lack of Spencer Sanders' accuracy, is that he's used to throwing to guys that even if they're not as tall, they have a larger catch radius. So that's something Brennan Presley doesn't have. But I think that's something that a guy like Jaden Bray, when he returns, can grow into. Now, Spencer Sanders, a lot of the throws that he missed were underthrown. You think about a third down pass in, I believe it was the second quarter or late in the first quarter last week, where had he put the ball out in front of the receiver, that's an early touchdown. Instead, the corner that was beaten on the play was able to get back into it. So even though Spencer, there were issues with accuracy, they were ones that I would look back on and say these are correctable.
Yeah, I think having Tay Martin, or he was out against Tulsa,
Correct.
but he brings he's 6'3", so that's a tall receiver right there. And not having him play against Tulsa last week, and unfortunately we'll get to later on, he's not playing in this game. That's a tough break for the Oklahoma State
We
Cowboys.
do have a lot of injuries that we will discuss as we go on to the show. Another thing that Coach Gundy said was how the offense is growing up and that they're trying to get these younger players developed. I mean, I know people are hesitant about Spencer Sanders' ability, but I think we do have to give him some slack knowing that this was his first game back with this new offense. What do you guys think we'll see from him today? Do you think we'll see some more improvement, or do you think since Boise State's defense is probably better than Tulsa's, it'll still lock him up?
Okay, first of all, no, it's not. It is not better than Tulsa's
Okay.
defense. Boise State cannot stop a soul, and we'll get to that in a little bit later. But that's one of the issues, we talk about in the NFL with guys just not wanting to play in the preseason. That's one of the issues that you will see present themselves when you don't have a preseason, because football is such a cohesive game, and you just need that time to develop that cohesion. So I think the fact that he's working with a completely new cast of receivers, including Bryson Green, who caught a touchdown, he's a true freshman, so he's going to need some time, and you can't just throw him in and expect first quarter to put up fireworks, because it's just not a realistic goal. for football.
Yeah, and with few receivers out as well. I mean, Bryson Green, his brother. What's his brother's name? Blaine Green. They're gonna get some playing action today. It's tough. It really is tough for Sanders because he's got to adjust without his buddies Tylen and Dylan Stone.
Mm-hmm. It's a hard season, I think, for a veteran quarterback to come in with such a young offense. I do want to talk a little bit more about the defense. We limited Tulsa to 4 third-down conversions on 13 attempts and only allowed and 17 points. What do you think the strength of the defense was last week? Ian?
Probably the defensive line. I was really impressed with the defensive line. They got pressure on Davis Brin. We saw Tyler Lacey a lot in the backfield. There were how many quarterbacks? There was one quarterback hurry, but several sacks. Tylen Irby got into the backfield. I felt like Davis Brin was under a lot of pressure in that game.
Davis Brin was under a lot of pressure, and one of the concerning things about the defense was that sometimes they let him get loose. And there were a lot of plays where he escaped through lanes up the middle, and a lot of times where he bounced out and broke contain from the defensive ends. But the real story of the defense, in my opinion, was the play of the defensive backs, because these corners were on top of these receivers a lot. A lot in third down, you saw Davis Brin fire a pretty decent ball to his receivers, but they were always blanketed, whether it was Christian Holmes, whether it was Jarek Bernard-Converse, who had an amazing breakup in the first half. Even Tanner McAllister was step for step with his receivers that he was guarding. So a lot of this defense is going to hinge on, can the corners beat their man one-on-one, because of the way that Jim Knowles likes to bring pressure. And in terms of Tulsa, A+ on the test.
Switching over to tonight's game, the Cowboys are in Idaho taking on the Boise State Broncos. This is their second meet between the two teams, but the first time for the Cowboys in Idaho. Let's start off with who has the edge on special teams. Looking at OSU, like we said, last week they had a great game on special teams with LD. He had 2 kick returns totaling 116 yards for 1 touchdown. Brennan Presley had 2 punt returns for 34 yards, and Alex Hale made all 4 of the extra points.
Well, let's in those stats, and yes, those stats are fantastic. Obviously, the LD Brown kickoff return from 97 yards really was what shifted momentum permanently in the direction of Oklahoma State. But there was a play in, I believe it was the second quarter, where Brennan Presley took the ball all the way back out to the 45-yard line. We weren't thinking that Oklahoma State was going to try to go score right before the half, but Presley's returning ability really gained field position, and I think field position is going to be a key factor in today's game, particularly with how Boise State's offense can go up and down the field.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to Tom Hudden. He has had 7 punts per game, 7 in each game. And I said last week, you can't win with 7 punts. Well, they did it last week, so that might be a magic number on punts. He's been doing a really good job. I read somewhere, I think it was PFF, Pro Football Focus, that said that Oklahoma State had like one of the best special team units thus far this season. But I think a lot of it's going to come down to Tom Hudden and where he puts the ball.
Yeah, Ian, I will guarantee you're not beating Boise State with 7 punts.
Yeah.
That offense can put up way too many points. They can put them up really, really fast.
I do think, like, when we watched that LD Brown return, I thought it was Presley at first. Like, I didn't realize how fast LD could run and how nimble he was.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we hadn't really seen LD Brown do much of yet this year, and so that's something that I'm hoping that we can see again.
You know, that's not something we've seen from LD Brown, and it's not really something I'd expect to see from LD Brown, because the offensive line doesn't give him anywhere to go. So people talk a lot about the fact that LD Brown is a very slow runner in terms of he likes to dance side to side looking for holes. The key word there is looking for holes, because they're just not there. So we don't get to see the breakaway speed that LD Brown possesses, but right there on that kickoff, you really saw his agility and his vision as well.
Yeah, I mean, you look at LD Brown's rushing yards, 24 carries, 56 yards. That ain't good. Then you go down the list, Jalen Warren, 20 carries, 46 yards in 2 games. Yikes again. You go to Desmond Jackson, 6 carries, 20 yards. Not that great either. The rushing attack has been pretty much stifled.
As a team, we are averaging 2.7 yards per attempt. That is that's unacceptable in my opinion.
That is really bad.
Let's take a look at Boise State special teams. They had last week they had 2 players, C.T. Thomas and Stephen Cobbs, who took 3 kick returns for 85 total yards, and then 2 players, Stephen Cobbs and Latrell Caples, took 2 punt returns. Caples got absolutely nowhere, but Cobbs went for 81 yards. Their kicker, Jonna Dalmas, had a perfect game with 4 field goals and 6 extra points. Their kicker only punted twice for 74 yards and was averaging 37 yards per punt. What are you guys' thoughts?
I mean, when you're playing UTEP, you're probably not going to punt that much. It was a 54-13 just beat down. I like Jonah Damalis. Again, 10 for 10, 5 for 5 on the season, field goal wise, 10 for 10 on extra points. But his lawn for the year is 39, so we don't know if he's proven beyond 40 and 50 yards.
Yeah, we don't know he's proven because the Boise State offense, whether it's against UCF or whether it was against UTEP last week, they just put up touchdowns. And that's the thing. They're a very boom or bust offense. They're either scoring touchdowns or they're not getting across midfield, which is hope, which brings hope. But the guys like Cobbs, and he's one of the players I highlighted for our offense segment. Guys like Cobbs, these guys can create after the catch. So that'll be a big test, not just for the special teams, but even for the defense as well.
All right, Ian, who has the edge for special teams?
I'm going to go with Oklahoma State just because of what we saw of LD Brown. I think their kick return game and their punt return game is a lot better. I think their punter is better, Tom Hutton. And then I think kicking is going to be a toss-up, but hopefully it doesn't come down to kicking.
Grayson?
I'm going to go with Oklahoma State, too, because we've seen that we are capable of kicking field goals longer than 35 yards. Boise State's kicker probably can, but we just don't
haven't
know.
Seen it. I'm going to give OSU this edge as well. All right, we're going to throw it to the other side of the studio with Jace and Asa.
Thanks, Alex, and welcome to your first College Football Corner segment of the year. And I'm Jace Andrews along with Asa Lucas. And I think, Asa, we got a great segment today talking about the craziest college football turfs with Oklahoma State playing at the blue turf today.
Everyone at home, I hope you're comfortable. We're going to be the all-you-can-eat garlic bread at Olive Garden tonight. This is going to be a fun segment. We're going to go through a lot of great stadiums, and you're going to enjoy every minute of it. Go ahead.
All right, so the first one, of course, we got to start with tried and true. Boise State, the blue field, first one. It was installed in 1986, and it was the first ever college football turf not green.
We were discussing it, and what we're going to kind of go through tonight is how Boise State is the older brother kind of stadium. It is the Trailblazer was the first one to say, hey, we're not going to do green. We're going to be a different color. We're going to be bold. We're going to be loud. And it's iconic. Everyone knows when you look at a blue field, you automatically think of the Smurf turf.
Yes, the blue, the Smurf turf. I think this is probably, it's one of those you look at colored fields now and you think Boise State. You're the originality factor. And I mean, I honestly can't wait to see OSU play on this field, but I think this is a really, really great turf.
Yeah, aesthetically, it's nice. The orange and the blue really balances out. It doesn't look, you'd think that's kind of a cheesy option, blue and orange, but it works really well. It's fun to look at.
All right, the next stadium up, Coastal Carolina. They have a teal turf, and I kind of like it. I got to be honest. This one's kind of in the middle. It's an interesting concept, but I think it works, especially the Coastal Carolina, and it's nicknamed the Surf Turf. I like it.
It's nice. When I look at this, I think of a middle child. I think of someone who is trying to be different than their other siblings, trying to say, hey, we're out here, we're alive, pay attention to me. But at the same time, it's not taking the risk that the older brother or the younger brother type of stadium is doing. And that's no offense to my co-moderator here, Jace, who is a middle child.
Yes, that's why I stick with this turf, the Surf Turf. This is my turf right here. But yeah, I think it's probably middle ground. I will agree with it. The middle child, middle ground.
It's nice, and as we go out through tonight, you're going to see it's definitely not the worst stadium that we're going to go.
Far from it.
But it's cool. Surf turf and teal. It's different. You can always appreciate someone trying to be creative and someone trying to be different.
All right, next one up, Luther College. It's another blue one, and I'm personally not with this one. The blue is a little too dark for me, and it's one of those, oh, the blue worked, let's copy it.
Yeah, I mean, this stadium was the first non-green field in NCAA Division III, which is cool. Once again, you're trying to be different, trying to be a trailblazer, but I just don't like it. There's nothing really aesthetically about the blue. It's a different shade of blue. It's not a fun kind of blue. That's like being stranded in the middle of the ocean at night kind of blue. It's really scary and not fun or enjoyable when I look at it.
Well, concerning the first thing I looked in the stadium was not the turf, that tells me something. Last one we're going to look at for this segment is Central Arkansas. The striped field, purple and gray. I like it. I really like it.
Nicknamed the Stripes. This is my personal favorite. And as we go out throughout the show, we're going to explain a little bit more about Central Arkansas and why its stadium is so beautiful. Hey, back to you guys.
All right, thank you guys. That's a great segment, and I'm very excited to learn more about all of the interesting fields that are out there in college football. And, of course, Asa's great comments and keep those Olive Garden rolls coming.
Central Arkansas is your favorite field, man? Out of those? I'm sorry. That looks like a prison yard to me. I'm really sorry.
They have 2 more segments.
They do,
it's
and
not
that's-
their, not their favorite
I will
right
say
now.
I will endorse the Coastal Carolina
I will
stadium
too.
because
Yes.
not obviously it's named the Surf Turf, but it's on the coast, and everything about that stadium screams Atlantic Coast to
And
me.
for whatever reason, it looks natural almost.
It does
It
look
does.
natural.
It's a weird,
It's a
it just
nice
looks like
feel.
some weird grass, you know?
All right. Well, don't go away. When we come back, we will have our offensive analysis for this game. All right, welcome back to the pregame report. We are now going to start with our offensive analysis for the Cowboys. Let's look at last week. We already mentioned LD Brown. What do you think we'll see from him this week? Like, what do you think? He's a senior running back. What do you think he brings to the team that we're kind of missing from the rest of the offense?
Not much.
Oh.
Look, LD Brown in terms of a kick returner was pretty fantastic, obviously. That was the big momentum swinger of the entire game. But the guy who ran with the most explosion and really the most promise and the most heart was Jalen Warren last week. And I think about his 11-yard touchdown scamper where he broke a tackle in the backfield and then broke another one. A play after breaking 4 tackles just to get back to the line of scrimmage. So
and that touchdown arguably sealed the game for the Cowboys.
Pretty much. So so he's the guy really that provided the most upside. And I'm pretty sure if you're Mike Gundy and Casey Dunn and the staff, you have to roll with the guy that has the hot hand, even though it's really not very hot because even he averaged only 2.8 yards per attempt.
Do you think that LD isn't getting the rushing yards because of his ability or because the O-line's not blocking for him?
I think part of it is the O-lineman, but I think also just the calls that are being made on run plays.
Yeah.
Because half of the time, it was second and long, and it was always a run play that went like 1 or 2 yards.
We are too predictable. Our offense is predictable.
It's becoming too predictable, and what needs to happen is you got to expand the playbook, maybe throw a couple of bubble screens every now and then. I think it would be nice if you just had like a running back like run to the left or the right, and just you throw it that way, short toss. And, they get like 5 or 6 yards that way.
And to your point, maybe it's not so much LD Brown or the offensive line, but it's more of LD Brown's running style. And for LD Brown's running style, where he's not just going to straight go out there and hit the hole.
Yeah.
He's going to really pick his holes very judiciously. So you're going to need a better offensive line for him. And I think Jalen Warren's running style just fits an offensive line that is subpar to be nice.
Yeah.
Switching over to the receiving side of the offense, Jaden Bray was the leading receiver last week. He had 4 receptions for 84 yards and 1 touchdown, which wasn't much, but being the leading receiver, he is out this week. What kind of hit do you think that takes for the passing side of the ball?
a massive one.
Yeah.
I think Bray, what he brought to the table last week was phenomenal. He had a really good touchdown where he makes a spin move at about like the 15-yard line and he cruised on into the end zone. I think losing him and then also Tate Martin being out as well, basically you're arguably two best receivers out for this game. Incredibly tough. Now you have to rely on Presley a whole lot more. And he's proven 8 catches, 103 yards in the 2 games he's played, has a 33-yard long pass for a completion. And then you also have Bryson Green, who had a touchdown in last week's game.
You know, to your point, and I touched on this earlier about how it takes time to develop a cohesion, particularly because there's no preseason. Well, it seemed as if in his first game, Spencer Sanders had developed some kind of working relationship with Jaden Bray. And you saw that particularly on a lot of timing routes, a lot of comebacks, a lot of out routes, a lot of dig routes, that they just were on the same page in terms of the timing. So now Spencer Sanders, at least for this week being, has to go develop that with somebody else.
Spencer Sanders he had a pretty good game in the second half, but we need him to play like the second half, the whole part of the game. You know, in the first half, he just looked lost. And so do you think that's partially because he hasn't had that preseason so that we'll be able to see him get, more in tune with the team and find that rhythm sooner? Or do you think that's just not going to happen tonight?
Well, you have to remember he also missed a full week of practice because he was in the COVID protocol, so that also has something to do with that as well. And then, of course, him just learning how to work with a new crop of receivers. But I think it takes about a half to get settled in. What I want to see from Spencer Sanders more is that Spencer Sanders looks comfortable overall when Spencer Sanders is out there using his legs. So I expect a lot of read options. I expect a lot of RPOs, the run-pass option, and I expect a lot of bootlegs because that's when he's most comfortable, when he can move around and then set his feet and make throws, not when he's just asked to drop back and throw from the pocket 30 times in a particular game.
Ian, you're kind of shaking your head. What are you thinking?
I don't know. It's just that Sanders has never been on
Have you given up on
a
Spencer?
consistent level. No, I have not given up on Spencer Sanders. I just don't think the ceiling for him is as high as we think it is. I just don't think he can be consistent enough to have a stretch of 4 more games where he's really good back to back. On the Spencer Sanders roller coaster, you're going to get, average game, pretty good game, and then average game again, and he just goes up and down and up and down. He's not consistent. He's the leading rusher, but he almost gave up a massive fumble during the Tulsa game. So it's really tough.
You see, you talk about how his ceiling may not be that high, but the caveat to that is that his floor is also not that low. So at best, and you saw this a lot in the Texas game last year, where he himself kept us in that game, and really the only turnover he made was because the receiver ran the wrong route. So Spencer Sanders, I think he just gives you the best opportunity to win, and his floor is not so low where you're going to get blown out by 30 by many teams.
I agree, but I mean, the crowd was chanting, "We want Shane," which is stupid in its own right. No, it's stupid in its own right. No, I'm not going to side with the fans. I'm not going to side with the fans. No, I'm just saying
don't even know what they're talking about.
I'm just saying people are impatient with Spencer Sanders.
People are patient, period.
I know. I'm just saying it's a problem.
Do we think that you mentioned that we didn't see many RPOs last week at all? Do you think that Spencer isn't playing to the best of his ability because of the play calling, or because
Yes, I think it has. I think it has everything.
We can agree there.
I think it has everything to do with the scheme, and particularly this week against a defense that is not very good. You have to try to mix it up and get creative.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Okay, take a breath, and we're going to move on to who has the edge. Let's talk about Boise State's offense. They have a junior quarterback, Hank Bachmeier. He has 603 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception on the season. Last week, he had a pretty great game, was 17 of 24 with 340 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Sophomore running back Tyler Crow was a leading rusher last week with 45 yards. Again, not very much on the rushing yards. But their senior wide receiver, Khalil Shakir, has 12 receptions on the season, 257 yards, and 2 touchdowns in only 2 games. So obviously Boise State's a passing game. What are your guys' thoughts on them?
Well, I think Hank Bachmeier is basically everything we want to see in this Oklahoma State offense in terms of they open the playbook up for him to just move the ball down the field and to really take shots downfield. That said, they do not have to beat you taking shots downfield. They can beat you in the intermediate game and still, produce big numbers because guys like Khalil Shakir and Stephon Cobbs are fantastic after the catch. That's something they're incredible at. I mean, Stephon Cobbs averages 24 yards per catch. And if you don't know, that is absurdly amazing. So really, the defense is going to have to be on their P's and Q's and really make tackles in the open field because these guys can burn you even after they get the ball in their hands.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Gundy goes after the game and was like, hey, you want to come to Oklahoma State? Because I think Hank could fit very well in the Gundy system.
Yep.
I think it's going to come down to, for at least Oklahoma State to stop him, it's going to come down to stopping the two receivers, Shakur and Cobbs.
Yeah.
So, Ian, who do you think has the edge between Boise State and Oklahoma State?
I think quite simply, based off what we've seen and based off what we know with injuries, I think the advantage for the first time, it goes to Boise State. I think Boise State has the better offense. They don't have much of a running game, but based off what we've seen, I think that Boise State offense is
I want to go on the record. I believe
better.
This is the first time in the
This is
3
the first
weeks
time.
that we're not picking Oklahoma State to have the edge on something.
Yes, it's a
I
shocker.
think.
It's breaking news. Make it a little graphic. Breaking news.
OSU. in
OSU
Ian's
does not
opinion.
have the edge on offense.
I will say one thing about this offense is that they are very one-dimensional. They do not run the ball very well, and they don't really run it much either. But when they do,
Do they need to?
they don't, and they
Not
don't
really.
particularly need to. But keep in mind, their first 2 games were against UCF, a decently quality opponent, and then UTEP, which is the worst FBS school in the country. So they really haven't had much of a test. This is going to be the best defense that they probably will face all game. So they're going to have to mix it up because if you are one-dimensional, this defense is good enough to really take advantage of you. But I think Boise State does have the edge here simply because they're just more explosive. But as it pertains to Oklahoma State, you need to get the ground game going because 2.2 yards per carry through 2 games is abysmal and unacceptable.
Hey, UTEP's 2-0. They were 2-0 going into that Boise State game. Put a little respect on the Miners, man.
When is the last time UTEP has been remotely respectable?
All right, this
Glory
is a
road.
conversation for another day.
In basketball.
So I'm going to give the edge to Boise State as well. Like you guys said, OSU definitely wins on the rushing side, but the Broncos have a stronger receiving core and a more accurate quarterback. Like you said, that's the quarterback that we want to see. So I'm going to give the edge to Boise State as well. So you heard it here. OSU does not have the edge on offense. We're going to send it over to Jace and Asa on the other side of the studio.
Welcome back to College Football Corner, where fun and college football come together. Jace, let's talk about these stadiums, brother.
Yes, all right. This one. Oh, yeah, same response there. The striped stadium and the red and gray. I don't like it. I don't think it works at all.
When I look at this, I think of funky footy pajamas and going to Golden Corral. Not a good mixture. The stadium just does not speak to me. It's like Christmas at a thrift store. I don't know what is going on with these pinstripes and the red. It just does not work, doesn't match at all.
Yeah, and on the TV, it just doesn't look like a football field at all. I mean, it's in Linwood, Illinois, so I guess there's not much there to do, but obviously making a football stadium was not their specialty either. So
I mean, when your professional nickname is the nation's most original, hideous football field, there's a reason. Everyone around the globe agrees on that.
all right, next one up, the New Haven Chargers. Copycat again. We got the blue, we got the yellow. I mean, the yellow is a nice accent, but it's just the same thing.
There's an old quote I remember on the elementary grounds of Sanger Ridge in 4th grade. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, and I'm tired of looking at blue stadiums. So if we cannot have any more of these blue stadiums, they're not original. Congratulations, Connecticut. You got something connected to football that's exciting and good, fun, but let's just move on. There's nothing here to talk about when looking at this blue.
Now this one, Eastern Washington.
We love this
The
one.
bright red, I am all in. When your nickname for this stadium is the Inferno, that's going to scare your opponents coming in. I mean, that's got to put some fear into the heart of the competitors that come in there.
And when you get to see the color option or the uniforms and the color options of black with red, that's just kind of powerful. It feels like a barbarian trying to come at you, or maybe like a Viking's going to take your head off. It's cool. It's exciting. It's violent. Red is the color of passion, the color of love. And that works with college football. We love watching this sport because we're excited. We're invested in these teams. And that's what you kind of see, and that's what you feel when you have this red field, this red turf.
And it also has some interesting facts. I mean, Colin Cowherd actually donated a generous amount of money to the stadium, and given he's a alumni. But I mean, I really like this one. I think it's top tier.
The Inferno.
All right, our last stadium we're going to look at is Eastern Michigan, nicknamed the Factory. Gray turf. How basic can you get? I'm not a fan, especially the end zones going back to green. Like, I get their colors are gray and green, but it's just not that good to me.
There's a weird experience when you're watching an Eastern Michigan football game. You're going to see this gray turf, and it's kind of like when you go over to your grandma's house around Christmas time and she's got TMC going on, and you watch those black and white, those old movies. That's what it feels like. It's not exciting watching Eastern Michigan football, watching a game in gray.
Well, especially on TV, it looks like a black and white movie. I mean, exactly what you said, kind of old school, old style. It just doesn't look good in like any manner, and I think that's where it really just drops it down.
And we weren't doing them any favors by going from the Inferno to the Factory. Very kind of boring, regular nickname.
All right, well, that does it for this segment. We're going to send it back to Alex at the desk.
All right, thank you guys for another very interesting segment. I mean, like I said, lots of these schools I haven't really heard of from before. I know for a fact Eastern Washington is an FCS school, so it's kind of cool to see what's all happening in the world of college football.
Yeah, man. That Eastern Michigan field kind of reminds me, I feel like it's like a metaphor for depression a little bit, just because it's so gray and sad.
I want to know if that stadium's in Detroit, because that would fit Detroit.
That feels like a Detroit,
nicely.
yeah. That feels like Detroit. I think the Lions should get that turf for them.
You know,
that makes sense.
We have, obviously, the Boise State field is bright blue. That's why we're talking about this. But the bright red, I don't know. And like I have a thought about stadiums that are just not normal colors, you know, because it messes with you.
Yeah,
that's one of the things I'm interested to see as this OSU team travels to Idaho. Does the blue field mess with your head a little bit? And is Boise State gonna wear all blue?
That's what I was thinking.
Because
I think that's a rule.
That should be illegal.
I think that is a rule that's illegal. So we might.
Okay.
I think they are wearing all blue.
Uh-oh.
So now it just looks like just random like action figures just like sticking up from like a blue base.
All right. Well, Jason Asa will have another segment when we come back. We will have our defensive analysis for the game, so don't go away.
Oh, there you go. Superstar.
The end of the practice is when we do all of our intensity drills.
Okay.
She was going at it.
Stop. If we get them to Detroit by, let's say Monday the 15th. Time's right there. There we go. Yeah. Just, you can't.
Don't want to talk about it.
When you see the water tower, you're gonna make a right.
If we win this, is the one way to get to the playoffs. I know.
Welcome back to the pregame report. Before we get into our defensive analysis, you guys mentioned how the blue turf and the blue uniforms might be distracting, but I think we need to talk about another issue that's going to be different for OSU is the weather in Boise. It's currently 60 degrees. They're in a wind advisory with wind gusts of up to 50 miles per hour, and there's a chance of rain. Do you guys think it's been hot and humid here when they've played the last 2 weeks. How do you think the team's going to prepare with that?
Well, the passing game for OSU is not the team's strength. So the fact that there's wind just basically means they're going to rely even more on the run against a team that can't stop anybody, whether you're running or passing. Now, I really think this hinders Boise State more because Boise State doesn't run.
But are they used to this climate?
Possibly, but even you can be used to it all you want to. You can't throw a football in a wind advisory.
I'll
tell you that much.
I will say this: Oklahoma has a lot of wind. being from Piedmont, that place
But
is
not
windy
this
as heck.
season. This team hasn't played in
I
this
know, but
conditions yet.
they're going to be used to the wind regardless.
You
Like
know,
high school games are probably windy all over the place.
You know, I will say this though. Last week we saw a lot of players cramping during the game against
So
Tulsa.
many. There were so many injury
It was
timeouts.
north of 100 degrees on the field last week in like a game played in the middle of the day. I feel like that won't happen that much, and I think 60 degrees, anybody should be able to play a sport in
That's
60
true.
degrees because, I mean, that's nice.
It's moderate.
I mean, now if we were going up to Boise in, say, late October until like December, then
That'd be a
then there
different
would be like
story.
a real cause for concern.
All right, well, let's look at our defensive players last week. Let's start with Devin Harper. We all thought that he wasn't going to play, but then he did. He was almost ejected for targeting. He's just a solid part of the defense that I think if he's healthy today, which I believe he's playing, I think he'll be great to have.
I don't want to make any assumptions because I thought he was going to be out, but he wasn't last week. I think he's going to be fine today. But Devin Harper has been phenomenal all season so far. 12 total tackles, seven solo, 1.5 sacks. He and 1 fumble recovery. So he's done a phenomenal job all year. And maybe other than Malcolm Rodriguez or Colby Harvell-Peel, he's kind of
he's the leader.
The guy.
He makes a difference. If he's on the field, you know his presence, which I think is really important. You mentioned Malcolm Rodriguez. Last week, he led the team in tackles again. He had 13 total, 8 solo, half tackle for loss. And again, just a great leader on the defense. Grayson, what are your thoughts on Malcolm?
Malcolm Rodriguez is the reason why Boise State should not attempt to even get a running game going because, I mean, this dude, you're not getting away from him. Yep. Now, where he really lacks in his skill set is that he in open space, and we saw this a lot when Davis Blinn got out of the pocket, either up the middle or was breaking contain, is that he was able to run around Rodriguez a couple of times last week. So he's not great at tackling more shifty players, but if you're going to try to run over Malcolm Rodriguez, do so at your own peril because you're not running through that guy, and there's a reason he's the leading tackler in the nation right now.
Tell you a guy that I was impressed with last week, Christian Holmes, the cornerback.
We haven't talked about him yet, and I don't know how we forgot about him, but he had a great game last week. He's had a great season.
He's had it's been a pretty quiet season for him, but what he's been doing, like he's been just like in the pocket and guarding his man. He had a couple of pass deflections where he's like just like right there, just ball falls down. He's been doing a really good job of that. I think he stopped one on a 2-point conversion, I believe. That was a phenomenal play by him. I think he'll make some big plays.
He's a very physical corner and can play bump and run technique very, very well. He does get a little bit handsy, and he got away with what would have been a crucial pass interference last week. He made the play fantastic, but he did get away with would have been pass interference. But he can tackle extremely well, and he's one of the keys to this defense because even if you give up a catch, you're still playing a lot of man-to-man defense, so you have to be able to tackle in space. And he's one of those guys that can do that and really limit receivers, which is going to be of the utmost importance tonight.
And this is only his second season with the team. He was a grad transfer from Missouri. He hasn't gotten interceptions since 2018. And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but OSU has not gotten an interception yet this season, and I would really like to see him get one tonight, knowing how pass-heavy Boise State is.
I would place my bet on Jarek Bernard-Converse getting the team's first interception before I did Christian Holmes, because Christian Holmes, he doesn't jump balls very much. His ball skills leave a little bit to be desired, so I wouldn't look to him to be the guy to take the ball away per se. But he's just a lockdown corner who is not going to give up a catch, and if he does give up a catch, he's not going to give up much ground after the catch.
I think my bet for an interception would be Colby Harvell-Peel, especially tonight. When Hank is going to come in and throw deep balls, I think that Colby Harvell-Peel will be right there, stopping the receivers right there and getting an interception.
He was the second leading tackler behind Malcolm last week. He had 7 tackles and half tackle for loss. And I think it's also important to note that Trey Sterling is confirmed out. Again, last week we thought there were injuries that didn't end up being injured. But if Trey Sterling is out, I'm expecting to see a lot more from Colby tonight.
Well, you're going to see a whole lot more from Colby tonight, and you're going to see guys like Colby Harvell-Peel, guys like Malcolm Rodriguez really taking over that shot calling role for the defense because that's what Trey Sterling does. He is the signal caller for that defense. But I think Colby Harvell-Peel is going to be really key because even if he lets guys get behind him, you mentioned there's a wind advisory. So the wind can blow the ball God knows where. So even if it pushes back against it, now you've got corners like Christian Holmes and Jarek Bernard-Converse, Tanner McAllister, who even if they're beat, the ball just might not get to the place where it's supposed to be if Boise State decides to stick with their plan and continue to throw the ball downfield even in a monsoon.
Yeah, I like Tanner McAllister tonight as well. I think he's going to step in for a couple of snaps because Trey Sterling is out. I think he'll do a really good job tonight. I mean, he has five solo tackles on the season. Not a lot else, just tackles, but I think we could see him in a ball hawk sort of way tonight.
Keep an eye on Jason Taylor II as well. He had an interception that he returned for a touchdown that was called back. He's a very opportunistic player.
Yes.
Let's take a look at Boise State's defense. They are +6 in the turnover margin. They, in their first week against UCF, allowed 31 points. Last week, allowed 13 points. They have 5 interceptions on the season for a total of 216 yards. What are you guys' thoughts on their defense?
I think their defense is very turnover heavy, and a lot of the praise comes from the turnover area. But if you look at the yards, they gave up 573 yards to UCF. You look at the UTEP game, it wasn't much better. Let me take a look real quick. It was 336 yards for them. So they're averaging, quick math, 425 yards.
Sounds about right.
Close enough. 454.
454 allowed, yes. So that's a lot of yards. That's a lot of yards, and I think that
Do you know how many yards OSU is averaging?
341 and a half per game.
That's a big difference.
And 179.5 rushing yards allowed. So maybe this will be a breakout game for Oklahoma State, depending on,
And that's what I was saying. If you're going to break out in the running game this week would be the week to do it, because Boise State is very thin up front. And for as critical as I've been of the Boise State defense, and rightfully so. I mean, they gave up almost 600 yards in a game, which even in a day and age where the rules are catered to the offense, giving up 600 yards is quite absurd. But as critical as I've been for them, they are very opportunistic. So you cannot be loose with the football. And Spencer Sanders made throws that he did complete against Tulsa, but my goodness, your heart almost jumped out of your chest because more than once that could have been 6 the other way. So that's not going to fly against Boise State, because these defensive backs are very opportunistic and they will make you pay for making throws like that.
Keep an eye on Tyrek LaBeouf for Boise State. He had a 100-yard interception return against UCF, against Dylan Gabriel, who's out for the season, unfortunately, in that game against Louisville. Which, how about that game?
That was
crazy.
You go through a whole game where there's no turnovers on either side for 59 minutes and 20 seconds, and then the last two plays from scrimmage, both interceptions. Incredible finish on Friday night.
Unbelievable.
Just as like a little quick fact before we throw it over to Jason Asa, compare Boise State as a whole to Missouri State and Tulsa. Do you think they're the hardest opponent we've faced so far? Or do you think they're kind of comparable in different aspects?
I think as a unit they're better, but I think Tulsa's defense in general is better than Boise State's.
Tulsa physically matched up better with Oklahoma State than what we're going to see from Boise State. The fact that Boise State is really posing a challenge to us, and the odds makers like Boise State.
Yes,
in this
they
game,
have us winning. They have Boise State winning.
They have Boise State winning. Boise State right now is a 3.5-point favorite. The reason that is because Boise State is just so much more opportunistic and so much more explosive. So their ceiling is infinitely higher. But because of the lack of defense, and we really haven't seen this offense play a real defense yet, I feel like their floor can be disastrously low.
Well, the other thing is, if this game goes to a shootout, how much do you trust Oklahoma State in those situations? Because the most they've scored all season is 28.
Yeah.
Fair point.
So real quick, Ian, who do you think has the edge on defense?
I think this isn't really a contest. I think that Oklahoma State defense has the edge. I think they're bigger, they're meaner, and despite Trey Sterling being out, get well soon as the president of the Trey Sterling fan club,
Right.
VP right here. I think the Oklahoma State defense is going to be fine, and I think they got the edge tonight.
Boise State's defense took the ball away 6 times against UTEP. UTEP is one of the worst programs in college football. Other than that, they've only had 1 takeaway. They just can't stop anybody. Give me Oklahoma State.
I'm going to take Oklahoma State as well. And even though Trey is out, we were out with him for the first half last week, so I think that the team has adapted to that. All right, back over to Jason Asa.
All right, welcome back to our third and final segment of College Football Corner. And Asa, we went through all 8 stadiums. Now we got to rank them. We got the top 3, we got the bottom 3. And you can agree to disagree, but I think we got it right here.
You've had the garlic bread, now here's some time for some German cake. Sit down, relax, and it's going to be a sweet finish to our segment.
All right, so we're going to start off with our top 3, and coming in at number 3, Eastern Washington, the Inferno, and I think this had a shot. These 3 are all really close.
Absolutely.
But Eastern Washington, it deserves that 3 spot, very much so.
We've seen a lot of different teams with their stadiums try different color schemes, but no one was being as bold as to put red. So when I look at this red stadium, I don't think Boise State I don't think Central Arkansas. I think of Eastern Washington and the inferno, the power, and the danger that comes with that is a top 3 stadium.
Coming in at number 2, Boise State, the blue of the Smurf turf, the original. I mean, you got to put it in the top 3. I think it's a key part in college football, and I like just what it brought to college football since that initiation.
It really is an iconic image. It's like when Muhammad Ali stood over Sonny Liston. Like, you see a picture of that, you know exactly who that is, you know exactly what's going on. And that's the same with the Boise State Stadium. That is blue, that is here, that is the Smurf turf, and it's not going anywhere.
And then at number 1, Central Arkansas, the stripes. And I know we're probably going to get some comments on this one, but I think the purple and gray, it just works. It just looks so nice on the field. And I don't know how they did it, but on TV, it looks phenomenal.
It takes a lot of courage to put in stripes, to be honest. That's a
Yes.
very bold move. And the reason why we decided to put it as number 1, it also has some sentimental value to myself personally. My mother, who I love dearest and who's a very important person to me, her favorite color is purple. So if I have an opportunity to like something that's purple and it reminds me of my mother, of course it's going to be my number 1. That's not even it's not a second thought in me.
All right, so we got the top 3. Now the bottom 3. And at number 3, the New Haven Chargers. We debated about this one a lot, but I think it comes in at number 3 from the non-originality factor.
It's a been there, done that, poser, your wannabe little brother who wants to go to the Conoco or play video games with you. It's just we love you, we appreciate what you're doing, but you're not hanging out with the boys tonight.
Coming in at number 2 on our worst list, Eastern Michigan, the gray. It just doesn't sit right with me in any way, and I think it doesn't give off the vibe of fun college football, which is exactly what I think turfs should be at this point.
We love our grandparents, but this is kind of like the grandfather stadium. You can rely on it. It's not going to go anywhere, but nobody wants to watch a black and white and a gray football game. That's just not entertaining. You're not going to be sitting in the student section seeing all these young 20-year-olds. Instead, you're probably going to see 70-year-olds throwing like raisins at the opposing team, just being bored out of their mind.
And the number 1, I don't think we even had a debate about this one. When your nickname is the nation's most original, hideous football field, you're going to be ranked in the bottom 3. It's a bad Christmas. That's what it is to me. It's not right. The red, the gray, it's just not good.
And it looks like those rugs you kind of had out in preschool, when y'all got together in the circle, sitting crisscross applesauce. It's boring and childish, y'all. We don't need it. We don't need it. Number 1, worst one, boring. Yikes.
Yes. All right. And now we're going to get into our score prediction here before we send it back over to Alex and the others. And so first, I'm going to go first. We'll go OSU winning 35-28. And the reason for that is because exactly what Grayson said. I think the running game is going to get going. I think it's going to be a breakout game. I think LD is going to hit his stride. I think that a long return really bumped him up, and he's going to start rolling in this game.
The reason why, don't call me a traitor. I promise I'm paying tuition. I like to go to the games. I sit in the student section. The reason why I picked Boise State to win this game, this is going to sound crazy, but OSU this season reminds me of the 3 new Star Wars movies that have come out. The first one that came out, you're like, okay, you had some very high expectations, didn't deliver. Missouri State. Okay, fine. Second one came out, and that one was just a heartbreaker. Tulsa, I expected. Spencer was back. LD Brown, I thought where things were going to get going. It's going to be exciting. Nope. So following suit of the new Star Wars trilogy, I doubt we're going to win tonight. I refuse to be heartbroken. I'm going to be a cynic, unfortunately. Boise State's going to get the win, 31-23. Hey, and back to the desk.
All right, well, hot take, Asa has Oklahoma State losing, and I do have to disagree with you guys. Asa, I know your mom really likes purple. My dad really hates purple, so I'd put Central Arkansas in the bottom 3 for myself personally. We're going to switch over to buy or sell. Ian, take it away.
Yeah, the whole mom bit had me, I was going to roast the crap out of you, but then I was like, well, you mentioned his mom. I love my mom too, so. All right, I won't say anything. Buy or sell time. Let's go. The Cowboys defense will have a turnover. Fellas, buy or sell?
I'm going to go with, and I'm the only fellow over here.
It's
Sorry.
okay.
I'm a dude. It's like good burger, man. I'm a dude, he's a dude, she's a dude, because we're all dudes, all right? It's all good here, man.
I like it. I'm going to buy that because there's a gunslinger back there for Boise State, and his name is Hank Burmeister. Not Burmeister. Hank Bachmeier. Burmeister plays for Virginia Tech. Hank Bachmeier, he throws the ball all over the field. He's very accurate, but he hasn't faced a defense that can take the ball away like Oklahoma State does. He hasn't faced that yet. So I think he'll commit at least one today.
I'm going to buy it as well because we need one. And like you said, with Boise State being a very pass-heavy team, there's more opportunities for that. And I think the defense is craving one. I mean, I know the fans are, and I think we'll get it tonight.
Okay. My next question for buy or sell is: a Cowboy receiver will have 125 plus yards. Considering what we know now, that Tate Martin is out and Jaden Bray is out,
I'm going to sell it.
yeah.
Even before the injuries, I sold it because Tay Martin had 107 receiving yards in the first week. Last week, Jaden Bray had 84. Like you said, both of them are gone, so there's no chance.
Yeah, I'm going to sell that as well. There's just not much big play opportunity within this offense, and now that you have guys like Tay Martin and Jaden Bray and Braden Johnson missing, there's just no way, unless Bryson Green is really fantastic after the catch. That's the only way I see them getting probably to 85. So I think the leading receiver is probably going to be somebody that catches like 6 balls for 67 yards or something in that range.
I think Rashad Owens is going to be a player to watch for tonight. I think he was on like first in line at the in the warm-ups.
All right, Grayson, your buys or sells?
All right, buy or sell. The Cowboy offense will possess the ball for more than half the game, meaning more than 30 minutes.
That's a tough one. I think I'm going to buy. Knowing what I know about Boise State, they're going to have quick possessions, and because they throw the ball a lot, so that won't waste too much time. I'll buy it, but barely.
I'm buying it as well. Although the Cowboys are only averaging about 26 minutes per game, like you said, I think both offenses are pretty explosive, so it's going to be back and forth with the Cowboys on the field a lot.
All right, here we go. And I guess this one's been a given the first 2 weeks, but Malcolm Rodriguez will have another double-digit day in terms of his tackle production.
I'll buy it, and I'll get specific. I think he gets 11 today.
11.
Wow, I'm going to buy it as well. Like you said, pretty given. First week he had 15, last week he had 13. And like you said, missing Trey Sterling. And if Devin's still nursing that bad ankle, I think he'll be our number 1 guy yet again. All right, so now let's switch over to the predictions. We already know Jason aces, but Grayson, do you want to start us off with your score prediction?
Let's go. Even without the receivers, I think the offense finally decides, wait a minute, we need to get creative because we're just missing a lot of our horses. That means I think we're going to see a lot of jet sweeps. We're going to see a lot of eye candy in terms of pre-snap motion. And I think this Boise State defense that just isn't very good is just going to be running around like chickens with their heads cut off. And I think Oklahoma State will finally put up 30 points. Oklahoma State gets another big stop at the end of the game. Give me OSU 34 or 31 to 26.
Ian?
Well,
yours is very close. This is the closest.
I had a hard time going back and forth on this one. I think that it is going to come down to the very last possession. I think Boise State will get a touchdown late, and I think they're going to go for 2 because, Mountain West after dark. They will not get the 2-point conversion. Oklahoma State wins 24-23.
Who do you trust more with the game on the line, Boise State's offense or Oklahoma State's defense?
Oh,
Oklahoma State's defense for sure.
Because I could rely on Malcolm Rodriguez to just come up with a tackle just like 1 inch short.
So basically what you said is that Oklahoma State's going to win the game.
Yes. A win is a win, but
win is a win.
Close.
The last 2 weeks, as you said, can't really count as a win, but they are winning in the record books. My prediction is 35-31. Like you both said, Ian more so, I think it's going to be a really close game. I do think it'll be really explosive offenses, high-scoring game, hopefully going in our favor. But like you said, the spread has Boise winning by 3.5, and last I checked, ESPN has them winning like with a 65% certainty. Hopefully we can prove them wrong, but it's also hard to judge with all the injuries. Yep. I don't think this is a fair fight for OSU to be playing Boise State.
Well, that's where the quality of your coaching staff comes into play. And we're going to be able to say something about Spencer Sanders. Now, do I think this is a judgment game for Spencer Sanders? No, I do not, just because he's missing his horses. And we've really forgotten to talk about the impact of Logan Carter not being there as well, as I believe he's done for at least a very significant amount of time.
And we didn't talk about Braden Johnson.
And we didn't talk about Braden Johnson, who's like who's a real deep threat, but also a very big body and a big target. So his guys are not out. But if he can elevate this team without his horses to a win, that will go a lot for Spencer Sanders. And guess what? I believe against Kansas State, we will not be hearing students chanting, "We want Shane." If Spencer Sanders can take this team to Idaho and win this week.
Can I say this? I don't think they should have chanted it. I was agreeing with you there. But
there's a lot of things they chant that they probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
You kind of mentioned.
We'll leave it at that.
You kind of mentioned next week's game, so let's talk about that briefly before we finish out the show. Cowboys are back at home versus the Kansas State Wildcats with a 6 p.m. kickoff in Boone Pickens. Last year, Cowboys barely beat them on the road. It was a final score of 20-18. OSU has a 2-game winning streak with them, and they lead the series 41-23. KSU, did they win today? I haven't been able to check that.
They did against Nevada. I believe it was 38-17, which kind of a surprise how big that score total was. I really like Nevada this year, and they were with Will Howard. Will Howard played against Oklahoma State last year, so it's a familiar quarterback for Kansas State coming into Oklahoma State. But it should be an interesting game.
Like you mentioned, Skylar Thompson, the starting quarterback for Kansas State, is going to be missed for a significant amount of time. And Kansas State is very similar to Oklahoma State in terms of they don't really score that much. And Nevada kind of matches the Mountain West Conference stereotype of just not having a great defense, or in Boise State's case, any defense really. But so I feel good about Oklahoma State welcoming K-State next week. We got to get through this week first.
We do. And K-State is 3-0 in the season, so if the Cowboys, win or lose, I think that'll directly impact how they'll play next week.
I think we'll see a Big Ten football game next week here at Ben Pickens again.
Yes.
Physicality.
Do you guys think ending the season against Boise State, how do you feel about that? The non-conference game going into K-State being our first Big 12 game.
I like it because of who the non-conference game is. Because you can say non-conference game and go play some schmuck from the Sun Belt Conference. But this is a Group of 5 conference, which is and probably the next best conference after you get out of the Power 5. And Boise State is a very good team in that conference. So I like the fact that they're going to have to really open up their offense, which is going to be really key because in the Big 12, if you're going to stay with the likes of Texas, Oklahoma, and to some degree Baylor and Texas Tech, you have to put up points.
Yeah, Boise State's been a Group of 5 institution. They've been kind of the staple. They were the kind of the original, the OG, best, could have been a national champion, Power 5, Group of 5 team. They're established as it is. They could have easily gone to the Big 12, in my opinion. But
and I'll say this one thing with Boise State being a 3.5 point favorite, and the line being at and the spread being at OSU having plus 145. That is investment. That is a bet I love this week.
I do too.
All right, well, the Cowboys are taking the field in Albertson Stadium. You can tune in to FS1 to watch the game. For the pregame report, I'm Alex Tresky, and alongside me are Grayson Singleton and Ian Nickel. Be sure to support your Cowboys tonight and tune in next week, and go Pokes!